Associate friends, and welcome to The World Transformed. My name is Phil Bowermaster, and with me in the virtual studio is my co-host, Stephen Gordon. Hello, Stephen.
Hey, Phil. How are you?
Well, I am super fantastic. Happy Friday. How are you, my friend?
Man, I'm ready to get this discussion wrapped up. We're giving all the answers in tonight's program, right? We're
like you, I think
the good stuff.
I've been looking forward to the show all week. How about you? This is the one.
That's right.
This is the one we're inclined to do from the outset, but I think we had to do the other two to show that we're really thinking about this stuff. This has been a tough week for us. We've been talking about self-driving cars. We've been talking about the terrible tragedy that occurred down in Arizona with the Uber self-driving car and the consequences of that. On the Monday/Tuesday show, we talked a little bit about the safety issues. On Wednesday, we talked about some other issues related to autonomous vehicles that maybe are also concerning. Personal privacy issues, just personal freedom issues, autonomy issues. It's like, if the vehicle's autonomous, are we less autonomous? Those kinds of things. Those are all things we have to be thinking about. What kind of people is our technology allowing us to make ourselves into, rather than saying what kind of technology, what kind of people is the technology making us into? What's it allowing us to make ourselves into? And so now we're going to address some of those concerns. And I want to kind of back into this by starting with some of the things we talked about at the end of the Wednesday show. And I think we ended just about with kids not wanting to get their driver's licenses anymore, right? That was one of the things we talked about. Well, I just want to point out, okay, guess what? We don't have self-driving cars yet, and they already don't want to get their driver's licenses. Therefore, you really can't blame self-driving cars for that, now can you? Am I?
Exactly.
Am I right? You know,
I think it's smartphones. I mean, they are connecting with their friends all the time in ways that we never did when we were that age. And if we wanted to have a discussion with a buddy or go see a girl or whatever, getting in the car and going and doing that was really the one option, right? I suppose we could get on the phone, but when the phone is attached to the wall, right next to where your mom's sitting in the recliner, it's not the same.
Right.
As I mean, and so we'd get in our cars and go see our friends. Well, that's not necessary when you got a phone in your pocket and you can get out of earshot of mom and dad and talk to whoever you want to. So they have autonomy. They're just exercising it in non-physical ways.
That's right. They've achieved a different kind via a different device, to which I can only say, kids these days, what are you going to do? Right? This is just a generational difference, like the kind that our parents used to observe about us. Right? There it is. Things change.
All that rock and roll and
the crazy fast way they dance and all that stuff. Exactly.
Exactly.
It's the same kind of stuff. That's what it is. So I'm going to take that one off as an objection to self-driving cars. You can object to smartphones on the fact that kids don't want driver's licenses, but it's not really an objection to self-driving cars. How about loss of autonomy? I'm going to make a crazy statement here. And work with me, Stephen. Tell me if you think I'm on the right track here. We really only lose our autonomy if we give up our autonomy, right? It's not about the technology. If we want systems that allow us to go do what we want to do, then we have to insist that that's how it works. If we want, for example, our cell phones not to track us all the time, then we have to go back to the manufacturers and the people who sell the systems and say, hey, don't do that, right? You've got to sell us technology that...
Give us an option to turn off the GPS, right?
That's right.
And
that's right.
And by and large, we don't have that option right now with smartphones. There might be a hack, but there's not a mainstream way of doing it.
I guess you can turn your phone off, right? Does that work? If you turn it off, does that? Yeah. Okay. So there are things you can do. You can not take it with you, right? That works. But but it's the old. Hey, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance, right? We have to insist on our freedoms that we want to have. We can't just say, oh, these companies took our freedoms away, and we said nothing and did nothing about it, and now we're mad, right? I mean, that's the wrong approach.
An example was given on the Wednesday show of, what about the police? They decide they want to question you. Okay, well, next time he gets in a car, let's lock the doors and have the car drive him to the precinct. No, that's not acceptable. Okay. Now, and so you just have to write the laws that the first time the police officers do that, you get slapped down for that. But you don't do that. It's a form of false imprisonment at that point. You don't You just can't do that. Now, what if there's a warrant out for somebody? That's a different question. There's a warrant out, and you've got a way of just delivering them right to the station. Maybe we choose as a society to allow that.
Maybe. Or maybe it just shuts the car down so they can't go anywhere and you know where they are or something like that. But yeah.
I'll be by to pick you up in a minute.
Yeah, because you know what? If the police pull me over and they tell me I have to get in the squad car and they're going to take me, I go, right? It's not like I am going to resist police authority under those circumstances. If a cop pulls me over and then says I have to follow him to the station, I will drive to the station. Right? It's not like I'm going to try to make a high-speed escape. So these are parallel situations, and the fact is I would not fight against the police authority in those cases. When it actually comes to the police just randomly taking over cars and driving them to police stations, yeah, that sounds dodgy, and we would need to push back against that. But we need to push back generally against abuses of police power. It's part of a broader spectrum of issues that we have to look at. Right. Don't just give all your freedom away and then complain that you don't have freedom. And again,
a lot of these issues are already being raised with smartphones.
That's right.
It's the same kind of thing. We have to insist that the government, whether they be police or other branches of government or Facebook or whoever, there's certain things you can't do with that data. As you say, we don't give up that autonomy.
Right, which we have done with the mobile phones, as we talked about on Wednesday, and maybe that was a mistake. And maybe we're realizing now that was a mistake. But if we're worried that self-driving car companies, or just car companies in general, because it won't even be autonomous vehicles, any car, whether you drive it or not, is going to be collecting this data, right? If we're worried about car companies and others accessing our driving data, we got to put rules in place around that. We got to fight back and say, no, that's not acceptable to us. We should be doing that around social media, around electronic devices, around all of it. We need to own our data, and we need to assert our rights where our data is concerned. But again, it's our responsibility. Don't blame the technology. The technology didn't do any of it, right? It's all what the manufacturers have done, what the regulators have done, and what we have sat by and allowed to do. We've really got to put the onus back on ourselves, because that's where it is. If we give our freedom away, we gave it away. I can't think of a simpler way of saying it than that. So that takes us to the issue of safety. And I'm going to read a little bit more from Michael Walsh's A Nation of Passengers, because I think this is pretty interesting. He says, in any case, the joke's on us. The nominal reason for introducing technology that absolutely no red-blooded American male could possibly want. That's you, Stephen, by the way. You are not a red-blooded American male. I hope you realize that. I'm just talking to you personally.
Yeah.
I somehow feel exempted from that. I'm not sure why, but anyway. Let's see. Could possibly want is that cars with no drivers and no steering wheels are somehow going to be safer, and that by eliminating human error, stupidity, drunkenness, distracted driving, texting, and a million other crazy things people do in their cars while in motion, we'll all get where we're going in one piece. But given the still imperfect state of the technology, how could driverless cars be perfectly safe? We don't even have consistent cell service yet. So do you see the little rhetorical trick he pulled in the middle there, right? Yeah. Where he went from safer to perfectly safe. Now, let me just get to the rest of this so we can deal with this argument. We know, for example, that roughly 30,000 Americans will die in traffic accidents every year, a number that has been steadily declining for decades, by the way, even as the population has increased, which is wonderful news. And yet that minuscule risk is one we all willingly assume every time we get behind the wheel, whether it's to run to the store, take the kids to after-school activities, or to drive across country just for the hell of it. Are the tech giants and the auto manufacturers really arguing that this number will now magically and precipitously fall? Stephen, I put the question to you. He's being rhetorical, but I'm going to ask it as an actual question. Is that the argument?
Okay, minuscule risk, huh? 30,000 Americans die every year. We've been in a war on terrorism after 3,000 Americans died, right?
That's right. Good point.
In 14 years of Vietnam, 50,000 Americans died.
Right.
In 14 years in Vietnam, and that was an unacceptable number of casualties.
It absolutely was, and we rack up a Vietnam every year and a half, right? Roughly.
Yeah, every year and a half we rack up a Vietnam, and these are not soldiers. These are people that have not accepted the risk. Again, a lot of the soldiers in Vietnam were there because of the draft. That's another issue, but still, it's a minuscule risk. No, it's not a minuscule risk. It's a number that, although it's gotten better, at its worst, Phil, it was a Vietnam every year.
Right.
It was 50,000 at its worst. It's now 30, and that's wonderful. But we can have that. We can have it at 15,000 instead of 30, and then a few years after that, 10,000. It's something we can work on that, and yeah, that is worth doing. And I really believe autonomous cars are going to get us there.
Yeah. The question is, are the tech giants and auto manufacturers really arguing that this number will now magically and precipitously fall? Yes. That is exactly the argument. I mean, I don't know if they're arguing that, but that's what we've been saying, and I think it's true. Yeah. It will go down precipitously. It will go down as autonomous vehicles take over.
Use that word magically, as if that's a word that we've not attached to our technology in the past, right?
Yeah. The number of deaths will go down, and you know what? If it does go down to 10, as we've talked about, that's 20,000 people a year not dying. That is not minuscule. If you, as we all do, know anyone who has died or whose life has been wrecked by being in an automobile accident, of course, Stephen, this is a reality you face every single day of your life, but most of us have a list of stories, right? Most of us have several names.
Well, I mean, there are very few of us that can't think back on our high school days. If you went to a high school of any size, and not think of that one or two of your friends, or at least people that you knew, by sight walking down the hall of your high school that didn't make it to graduation.
That's right.
Because of an automobile accident. That is the way young people die.
Yeah.
Is automobile accidents. It's just nothing but sad, and we can cut that risk in half and more. And so yeah, Michael, I would say that it's going to magically and precipitously fall.
I'm perfectly comfortable with that phraseology. Actually, you want to put it in those terms? Yeah, that's exactly what it's going to do. We wouldn't be behind it if we didn't think that was going to happen.
There's very little chance he will hear this, but I'll bet you, Michael, that $1,000, and I'm being 100% serious.
There's big money here.
Here we go. Yeah, I'll bet you $1,000 that the number of fatalities on the highway will drop from 30 to 15 in 10 years.
Yes, Stephen. Bold.
Yep.
Bold statement, and putting your money where your mouth is. I like it. I like it a lot. Yep. Also, I want to point out, getting back to the minuscule just for a moment, 30,000 is the body count, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't count all the people injured, right?
You could be a quadriplegic for life, and your number is not on that list.
Right. And I don't know what the breakdown is there, but I'm thinking at least probably 30,000 people injured or messed up in some way, right? It's probably the same, if not greater. So.
Oh, it's much greater. It's probably 30,000 times 3 of serious injuries and serious lifelong injuries, because most people don't die in a serious automobile accident. You're maimed, right?
Right. Okay. So it's not minuscule. That's a bad word. That was an unfortunate choice of words, and I think that fortunately he chose some better words there on the magic and precipitous drop, because that is now how I'm going to refer to it from now on. I think that's
it's a magic and precipitous drop. Fall. Yeah.
So what does Elon Musk have to say about all this?
Well, he is saying that by this, and he said this at South by Southwest just a week or so ago, that by this time next year, the systems that they're employing in their Teslas will be significantly better than humans in all circumstances. So yeah, I mean, the systems will be better in construction zones than we are. It'll be better on the highway, be better in the town. In all circumstances, their self-driving systems will be better than humans. That is a bold statement. It's a lot bolder than me saying $1,000 for cutting it in half in 10 years, right?
Absolutely. It is a bold statement. And you can say, oh, well, Elon Musk, he's feathering his nest, of course, and he's always talking crazy, going to Mars and all that kind of stuff. But I would point out that what Elon Musk is saying is actually what we all tacitly assume about these systems anyway. And I'm going to take it back to Alex Roy here just for a moment. Something he said about this accident. Alex Roy, by the way, is a blogger at drive.com. We talked about him extensively on the Monday show. Here's a quote from him talking about this incident in Arizona. He says, "A slow-moving pedestrian at night, well beyond human line of sight, is precisely what radar and LiDAR sensors are supposed to see. This is precisely the type of crash self-driving cars are designed to prevent. Now,
Yep.
that is damning. That is damning to Uber and to that system to point that out. But it also is very revealing that we already have this expectation that these systems will outperform humans. Because no human, I think, looking at that video, could be expected to save that woman's life. But we believe that a self-driving system, adequately implemented, designed right, and put in place right, would have done it. Even Alex Roy, for all his criticism of Uber, seems to be saying exactly that same thing. That's really what we know deep down, is that these systems will do that. They will save these lives. And at that point, the harshest critics are the ones coming out saying that that's what these systems are going to do. I guess if we've got them agreeing with us, there's not much more we need to say.
It comes down to this, Phil. How do we get through this awkward adolescence when the systems are not as good as we want them to be? I mean, right now, the whole world's coming down on Uber over this, right?
Deservedly, it would appear.
Under these circumstances, if this had been a person driving in their car and we'd have seen this video, we'd have said, oh, well, this person just walked right out in front of them.
There's nothing you can do. Yeah.
Nothing you could do. I feel awful for the person who died and the people who cared about that person. I feel bad for the driver, because nothing could be a worse feeling than to be driving and strike somebody and they die. It's right. That's awful. But we don't put fault on that human being who was behind the wheel under those circumstances. But we do put fault on these systems. And so what we're saying basically is we expect them to be better, and maybe we don't deploy them until they are better. And so what do? How do we get them better? Phil, here's my idea. We build a virtual world, and that's not too hard to do. You could make it Grand Theft Auto. You could take the map of Los Angeles that's in Grand Theft Auto and put these self-driving cars in there and let them drive around and throw all kinds of things at them and make them better that way. And only when they show that they're substantially better than people in a certain situation do we deploy them in those real world situations. Maybe we say, okay, it's good enough for interstate driving, but okay, you're getting off the interstate, beep beep beep, it's back to you, human driver.
Right.
Or maybe you're entering a construction zone, that's the human driver again. Or you're in a residential area, human driver, whatever, and only allow the system to update and say, yeah, I can handle this kind of driving when it's proved itself over and over and over again in a virtual simulation. Maybe that's what we do. I suspect a lot of that is being done. I don't know that for a fact, but it seems so obvious solution that I have to believe it's probably been tried. So
you would think that between a VR solution like that and just straight up machine learning type algorithms that we've seen produce all these amazing results in other areas, that a solution lies there someplace, right? A self-driving, an autonomous car system is a robot. It's a computer system. And we're getting good at making systems that learn, that respond better, and that leapfrog above performance levels that they've already achieved. I think VR is a great idea for that. Or maybe it's virtual, and they do it in they take like an abandoned town or something like that and just have actual cars driving around and trying to mess each other up. I don't know how they set it up, but I think that's a good idea. Definitely we want to mitigate the risks as best we can. But to swing it back to the case that Alex Roy made and that we talked about at the end of the Monday show, if we move ahead, then we have to be careful about all the people who potentially never asked to be involved in this who might suffer for it. But if we don't move ahead, we have to think about the $30,000 a year, right? That's the thing. There's this awful calculus around how many lives can be saved and how many will be lost. There's no absolute answer to these, so it takes a certain amount of humility. But I think a little bit of humility combined with a little bit of optimism here, and yes, and
it's different human lives, okay?
Yeah.
If you get that number down from 30 to 20, let's say, and you save those lives, those who still die might be a different set of people.
Right.
And so what do you say about that? So, yeah, a lot of humility is required. And we tolerate sins of omission more than sins of commission. right?
Yeah.
If a failure to act is tolerated more than acting and creating a problem, it just behooves the manufacturers of these systems to get them so much better than people that we just as a society go, you know what, it's not really even arguable anymore. When we reach that point where it's the ethical calculation is just so much in favor of the self-driving cars at that point, that's where we want to get to, and we want to get there as fast as possible.
Yes.
Let's just put it that way.
The math ultimately becomes unavoidable. It ultimately becomes unavoidable that there are too many human lives to be saved for us not to ultimately make that move. So all I can say is, yeah, I like the VR idea. I think machine learning has a role to play. Elon Musk, keep up the good work. Hope you're not just hyping, and let's see those systems that are better than human systems. Anyway, it's something we've been talking about for years, since long before there were self-driving cars. You and I have been talking about it, and it's something we're going to keep tracking for years to come. Hopefully we won't have too many more weeks like this week, but there will be problems that occur, and we're going to be ready to talk about them, aren't we?
Absolutely.
All right, Stephen. Well, great talking self-driving cars with you this week. Great having you all with us. We're going to be back next week with 3 brand new shows and a more fun topic, I absolutely promise. And until next time, live to see it.